This is ACC Nation with Will Ogerman and Jim Quist, featuring ACC sports news and interviews. Available on streaming radio, podcast, and YouTube. The preseason AP Top 25 men's basketball rankings are out. Only 3 ACC teams made the top 25. We'll take a look at those 3 teams here in just a minute, but let's take a look at some of the teams in the top 5 first. We'll start at number 5, Kansas, and get a little feel for what they're going to bring to the table this season. As Will and I were discussing before we started, it's basically everybody's just reloading. There's tons of talent that is in the system already, and Kansas is no exception.
Yep. National champion, did lose, a decent amount of talent, but they're, like you said, they're reloading a little bit. Got guys like Kevin McCullough who transferred in from Texas Tech. Jalen Wilson was a big contributor for them this year. Joseph Yesufu, someone that looks like he's going to be in line for a big year this year for them. A lot of this I feel like is riding on just Bill Self being such a really good coach, and you can never count Kansas out when it comes to that. And somebody's gonna just suddenly emerge and just be a big piece for them going forward.
Next up is number 4. No surprise here. We've got a lot of blue bloods. Kentucky. Big John has got 3 seniors on his roster, and that's going to make a big difference in helping to season some of these freshmen he's got coming in. This team is a real deal.
For sure. And yeah, they had obviously a first round exit in last year's tournament, which, I like to bring up because, cool. 215s upsets are always cool, but they returned Oscar Tshiebwe, who will probably be National Player of the Year in the preseason. He is just recently had a little bit of a minor surgery, according to Coach Cal, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a big issue going forward. They do get Jacob Toppin back, who's a solid bench piece. CJ Frederick, who missed pretty much all last season with an injury. I think he's going to be a big addition to his team. Severe Wheeler, somebody who is a solid guard for them. Obviously, they bring in a talented recruiting class again. So, yeah, you expect the Wildcats to be a factor again this year.
At number 3, it's Houston, and it's been a while since we've seen Houston go all the way, but this team has the potential to take it to the tournament and win a national title without any problem.
I'm a big fan of their backcourt. Marcus Sasser and Jamal Shedd are both really, really good players. Both are really good on both ends of the ball. I just remember them playing Virginia last year and them just being just magnets for the basketball, just making it very hard for them to get a lot of anything done. They aren't a super tall team. Their tallest player is 6'9". We'll see. So they're going to play a lot of, guys, like I said, Shed 6'1", and a lot of their guys are like 6'5" to 6'8". So they're a team that's going to, play a smaller brand of basketball, but I think Kelvin Sampson has been doing this for a long time, and this is going to be in the discussion for one of the best teams he's ever had in preseason. Keep in mind, this team was pretty loaded last year, but they just got decimated by injuries.
At number 2, and this is a team that everyone was talking about, should be at least number 1 or in the top 3. Well, they're in the top 3. They're at number 2, the Zags, Gonzaga. This team, again, just reloading. Lots of talent, lots of potential. I'm not 100% sold on the Zags being this high.
I get it. Drew Timme, and probably, one of the 3 best players in the country this year, maybe, at least in the preseason, someone who's, been around, and thanks to things like NIL is able to stick around in the college game, as this situation. They do bring back some solid pieces. Julian Strouder, somebody who has had a lot of hype around him. He's back. Rasir Bolton's back too, another solid guard piece for the Zags. They did pick up Efton Reed out of the portal, someone who played last season at LSU. He's a 7-footer who I think will play a lot in the middle with Timmy. They do have quite a few big men in this game, but in this on this roster. But yeah, you mentioned it. They do have. Yeah, it feels like this roster is down a little bit from recent years, but they do also have a really, really tough schedule to start the season. That they play the Armed Forces Classic against Michigan State, go to Texas, to Austin, Texas, and take on the Longhorns, and then they play Kentucky in the first of a series against the Wildcats. So they're going to have a really tough preseason schedule once again, and yeah, they'll probably run through the WCC, and I think that's where a lot of this ranking is on. But they are still, don't get me wrong, they're still a really, really good roster, and Mark Few's a really good coach.
Right. I think what you're just pointing out there with the beginning of the season is going to be tough. We'll find out just how good they really are with how they perform against the three teams that you mentioned. If they don't show up, as we know in basketball, the front end of the season is tune up for when we hit conference action. So it could be one of those things where they need to fine tune themselves. But if they start out strong, that's an opportunity for me to start eating crow early and saying that, hey, maybe this team is right where they should be. Now let's take a look at ACC teams. Oh, did we forget number one? No, because ACC teams take the top spot. At number one, it's North Carolina. Hubert Davis has a loaded roster. He fine-tuned that team back in February and made it a lot further than anybody would ever. I think most people had given up on that team. And they thought, well, this is pretty much it. He can't do anything with it. But Hubert Davis just put his head down. He got his players to put their heads down and said, let's work on this. Let's make it happen. And he took that team a long way after February.
Yeah, and there's a much different thing between, a lot of people are trying to compare them to the UCLA team from last season or from the season before, that went on a miracle Final Four run to after being ranked highly in the preseason and failing to meet those expectations. But I think this is a much different thing that, and you mentioned the reason, Jim, is they after that loss to Pitt in the middle of February, they figured everything out and were one of the best teams in the country after that. Looking at, I think it was Bart Torvik had them as one of the best team, I think the best team in the country after that. So they return a lot of talent from that team. They obviously lost Brady Manick, but they get Leaky Black back, who is one of the best defenders in the country. Armando Baycott is, one of the best players, going to be one of the best players in the league. They picked up Pete Nance out of the portal from Northwestern, was a 1,000-point scorer for the Wildcats, who will provide a lot of inside depth. Caleb Love and RJ Davis are both back. Both guys were big pieces to the run. Caleb Love, obviously, a volume shooter, and I think they were a lot better when he was off ball. Remember Puff Johnson having a nice tournament, playing a little more in the latter stages. I think he's due for a big year. And I say there's a reason North Carolina is the number one team in the country preseason, and I certainly don't have an issue with that.
They found their chemistry last year at the end of the season when it really mattered. Now, the question is, will that chemistry immediately kick back in and continue into the fall? Hey, we're only a couple of weeks away from the start of the season. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, because, there really was a very short break between the tournament and the time that they came back and started working during the summer and getting ready for the fall. So we'll see how that all plays out for the Tar Heels. Boy, it just feels spooky to me that we're looking at a Tar Heels team here, roster-wise, and the way that Hubert Davis handles things looks to me like a return to dominance for North Carolina in basketball, at least in the ACC. See how that plays out this year. and of course in the future. But man, it really does have that deja vu feeling to it. A team that we always expect to be at number one because it seemed like they were always ranked number one, but that was under Coach K. Now we have John Shire. So, new coach, slightly different perspective on things, loads of talent. There's no question about that. But it ranked at number 7 is Duke. So I think that the people who are voting here are saying, John, you have to prove yourself. We realize you've got the talent. That's why we're putting you in the top 10. But you're no Coach K. Show us who you are.
Yeah, and they don't really they're not going to really test themselves too much early in the non-conference. Their biggest game is the Champions Classic game against Kansas on November 15th. That one obviously in Indianapolis, but yeah, I think there's I think the reason they're right here where they are is because of all the talent they brought in on that recruiting class. They're loaded with freshmen. Some of the highly touted freshmen, in the country, Derek Whitehead, who's actually going to miss the start of the season. Supposedly after some surgery. Derek Lively is a really highly thought of prospect. Same with Kyle Filipowski. They supplemented it with some pieces out of the portal from a couple of Big Ten schools and a couple of Ivy schools. They also still have Jeremy Roach, who will lead things at guard. So he's they're going to rely on him a lot to move the offense. And obviously with the new coach, Coach Shire, they're heaping a lot of expectations on him, but at the same time, looking at the Coach K coaching tree, it's very Bill Belichickian in that the branches have not necessarily succeeded, if you know what I mean.
Yes, and all we have to do is look north to figure that one out. Let's go to the third team in the top 25 out of the ACC. Tony Bennett is back, and maybe with a vengeance because he's got a loaded squad. Lots of talent. Didn't click on the offensive side last year, but it sure looks to me like they've got what it takes to do it this year. That could mean all the difference in the world. You put that smothering defense together and have it finally start working, because it does take time for players to learn that and to effectively implement it. Put that together with an offense that may have clicked in the offseason and may really be running at people this year. Virginia at 18 may be a little low, but they've got to prove themselves because they haven't been doing so well the last year or so. They need to show that they're back into contention for being a top 10 team.
Yeah, the questions obviously what plagued them last year was not being able to shoot the ball very well. Obviously they figured it out a little bit in the NIT run. Armand Franklin was pretty hot during the NIT run. You're banking on him continuing to shoot the ball better and be more comfortable in this offense. A lot of the pieces from last year are back. They did add Ben Vanderplas, a grad transfer from Ohio U, who's somebody who had a big game against them a couple of years ago. They also have one of the probably the best recruiting class they've had since that one that helped propel them to the national championship. Heard a lot of buzz about Isaac McNeely, a guard who played in the pack line at high school and nearby Poca, West Virginia. A lot of hype around him. The other guys, Isaac Trout, Leon Bond, Ryan Dunn, all of have done well in practices. But yeah, as far as the freshmen go, McNeely's the one to watch, and I think this team is definitely deeper than last year's team. And if they can tighten up that pack line defense and with a veteran team like this, you think they will. And if they can score the ball, then watch out, ACC. This might be a little low for them.
I think one thing that you just pointed out, Will, that has been brought up by some other people who are doing analysis of Virginia is they have more depth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key thing because they were really on the shallow end of things last year. So if you have 7 people pretty much going at it full blast for an entire game, after a while you just run through everybody. There's only so much energy there that they're going to have, but there's more depth. That means you can rotate players in and out, keep those legs fresh, and that may make all the difference in the world. Those are the 3 teams that are from the ACC that are in the top 25 preseason poll. UNC at number 1, number 7 is Duke, and at number 18, Virginia. But there are several teams that are in the receiving votes category that we think we should take a few moments to talk about. At number 28 is Miami. And I think this is a team that probably after a week or two are going to be in the top 25. The talent is there. There's enough depth to make a difference. And I think Coach Larinaga is in for a good run this year.
Yeah, they probably the best backcourt in the league. Isaiah Wong, who's someone who I thought could end up going pro after last season, and ended up coming back and then threatening to leave and then deciding to stay. Thanks to NIL. Nigel Pack, somebody brought in out of the portal, one of the best players to transfer, is going to be a big piece of this offense. The questions are the front court. They lost some of their better pieces out of the to graduation or transfer. So that's something they're certainly going to be working on as the season progresses. I do think Anthony Walker's someone to watch in the front court. I think he's going to take a step forward this year. But yeah, I think that's where the questions lie for this team are in the front court.
At number 32, talk about sequoias. I mean, this team is full of really tall players. Florida State, 32.
Yeah, I am a lot higher on this team than a lot of people are. I feel like this team is going to be really, really good this year. And they returned a lot of pieces from the team last year, even though they kind of fell off at the end of the season, but they were also really banged up. I remember at the end of January, they were actually in first place in the ACC before people like Caleb Mills went down, and I think Caleb Mills is going to make a big difference in this team. They get a Matthew Cleveland back, somebody who was thought to be maybe a one and done, but decided to come back for another year. You talked about some of the massive pieces they bring in. They only have one guy in the roster who's north of 7 feet, and that's Naheem McLeod, who's 7'4". A lot of guys in that 6'10", a lot of 6'10", 6'11" guys that they're just gonna come at you in waves with a bunch of tall people. And I think they have the shooting, and I think their defense will be better this year. And I think they will be ranked, and I would not be surprised as the team that ends up at the end of the year in 4th place in the ACC, for example.
This is a team up next at number 40 that I think that voters are giving them the respect that they're due. They're giving their coach and the players the respect that they're due. Now, they're not in the top 25, but they've surprised people year after year and find themselves making a run for things and getting into the top 25. At number 40, it's Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I'm curious. This is an interesting one for me. I'm not really sure what to think about the Hokies roster. Obviously, Keve Aluma's finally gone. Someone who's been there forever. They do have some nice pieces back. I'm a big fan of Darius Maddox, who has really started to make a name for himself. They do have Hunter Couture back and Justin Mutz back, both guys who are big contributors for this Hokies team. It's just a matter of who else can step up with this team. And I think there's some respect to Mike Young and the job he's done with the Hokies the last couple of seasons. I'm not 100% sold on them just yet, but yeah, I think they have a chance to have a good season this year.
Let's talk about another Mike, and this is a Mike that really needs to sell things because the last couple of seasons have just been vanilla. Mike Bray. Number 43, Notre Dame. Not many votes here, but enough recognition to say, hey, this is a team to keep an eye on. And, that's the thing about Notre Dame. They sneak up on you. And I think this team has the possibility of sneaking up on people this season. Now, how long it takes to get there and how far they go, it's anybody's question.
Yeah, this is a team that I thought their defense was a lot better last year than it had been in previous years. That was something I was kind of curious about. They do lose some. Blake Leslie was a one and done player for them, but they get the highly touted freshman in JJ Starling, who could also be a one and done type player. It'll be interesting to see how his progression as a season goes on. They do have a lot of definitely a lot of experience. They got Nick Lashevsky back, Dane Goodwin, Robbie Carmody, Marcus Hammond, Cormac Ryan, all grads. Trey Wirtz as well. They're all grads. So this is a very experienced roster that Mike Bray has. And if you think they can, I think they can certainly make the tournament this year with what they have. It's just a matter of whether or not some of these guys behind them can really develop.
Let's a look at the AP preseason men's college basketball top 25. At number 1, North Carolina. At number 7, Duke. At number 18, Virginia. Those are the 3 teams that are in the top 25. And, of course, the teams that are receiving votes: Miami, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Notre Dame. And we're going to have more on basketball and, of course, football as the season progresses. Don't forget, basketball starts in just a few short weeks. We'll be having a lot of special guests on over the next couple of weeks to talk about basketball and a lot more right here on ACC Nation. That's Will Ogen and I'm Jim Quist. Cheers.
Goal.